The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the silence of the first-class cabin like a gunshot. "You don't belong here," the flight attendant sneered, looking down at the woman in the hoodie as if she were dirt on his shoe. "People like you belong in the back, or off my plane entirely." He thought he had won. He thought he was clearing out trash. He didn't know that the woman he was handcuffing had just signed the paperwork to buy the entire airline 3 hours ago. By the time this plane touches down in London, his career won't just be over. It will be a warning to every employee in the aviation industry. The rain lashed against the reinforced glass windows of JFK's Terminal 4, blurring the runway lights into streaks of neon red and white. Inside the exclusive lounge of Zenith Airways, the atmosphere was a sterile mix of expensive cologne and quiet elitism. Jessica Carter sat in the corner, far away from the champagne bar and the business travelers in their bespoke suits. She pulled the hood of her charcoal sweatshirt up slightly, shielding her face from the harsh, fluorescent lighting. To the casual observer, Jessica looked like a tired graduate student, or perhaps a backpacker who had wandered into the wrong lounge. She wore no makeup, her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and her sneakers were scuffed from a week of hiking in the Pacific Northwest. She sipped her sparkling water, her eyes scanning the room with a sharpness that contradicted her relaxed posture. Nobody paid her any attention. In fact, most people actively looked through her. Jessica checked her phone. A text message from the board of directors. "Transfer complete. The press release goes out tomorrow morning at 09:00 GMT. Congratulations, CEO Carter." She allowed herself a small, private smile. It had been a grueling 6-month hostile takeover. Zenith Airways, once the crown jewel of transatlantic travel, had rotted from the inside out. Their stock was plummeting, their service was abysmal, and their reputation for discrimination was becoming a PR nightmare. Jessica had been brought in to cut the rot out, and she decided the best way to diagnose the patient was to feel the symptoms herself. Flight ZA-404 to London Heathrow is now boarding first and business class passengers, the PA system announced. Jessica picked up her battered leather duffel bag and joined the queue. Ahead of her stood a woman who looked like she had been dipped in gold and hardened in ice. She wore a white fur coat, despite it being October, and held a red designer bag like a weapon. This was Victoria St. Clair, a minor socialite known more for her divorce settlements than any actual contribution to society. Victoria turned, her eyes raking over Jessica's hoodie. She let out a loud, theatrical sigh and turned to her companion, a man in a pinstripe suit. "Standards really are slipping, aren't they, darling? I didn't know they let the cleaning staff board with the priority group." Jessica ignored her, keeping her gaze forward. She handed her boarding pass to the gate agent. The machine beeped green. "Seat 1A. The agent paused, frowning at the screen, then at Jessica, then back at the screen. "1 moment," the agent muttered, typing furiously. After a long, awkward pause, where Victoria tapped her foot impatiently behind Jessica, the agent handed the pass back. "Enjoy your flight, Ms. Carter." Jessica walked down the jet bridge, the cold air hitting her face. She stepped onto the aircraft, turning left toward the first-class cabin. The cabin was designed for opulence, soft beige leather, walnut trim, and the scent of lavender. Jessica found seat 1A, the prime spot. She stowed her duffel bag and sat down, closing her eyes. She had been awake for 36 hours finalizing the acquisition. All she wanted was a glass of water and 6 hours of sleep. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, nasal, and dripping with disdain. Jessica opened her eyes. Standing in the aisle was Victoria St. Clair, holding her boarding pass like a warrant. Behind her stood the head purser, a man named Gregory Holloway. Gregory was tall, with slicked-back, greying hair, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His uniform was immaculate, but his posture was rigid with aggression. "Can I help you?" Jessica asked calmly. "You're in my seat," Victoria snapped. "I always sit in 1A. My husband owns a substantial amount of stock in this airline, and I demand you move." Jessica looked at Victoria, then at Gregory. "I have a ticket for seat 1A. I selected it when I booked." Gregory stepped forward, invading Jessica's personal space. He didn't ask to see her boarding pass. He simply crossed his arms. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. This cabin is for full fare paying passengers. Perhaps you upgraded with miles, or a staff pass." "I paid full fare," Jessica said, her voice steady. "And I'm not moving." Gregory chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Look, let's not make a scene. Ms. St. Clair is a Diamond Medallion member. You are clearly misplaced. I have a perfectly good seat in economy comfort. Row 22. It has extra legroom. I suggest you take it before I have to make this official." "Official?" Jessica raised an eyebrow. "Are you denying me the seat I paid for because of how I look?" "I am denying you the seat because I manage this cabin, and I decide who fits the profile of our first-class experience," Gregory said, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "And frankly, you lower the property value." Victoria laughed. "Exactly. It smells like street in here now." Jessica felt the anger rise in her chest, hot and familiar. But she pushed it down. This was exactly what she needed to see. This was the culture she had just bought. "I'm not moving," Jessica repeated, leaning back and fastening her seatbelt. "If you want me out of this seat, you're going to have to physically remove me." Gregory's face turned a shade of crimson. He tapped his earpiece. "Captain, we have a non-compliant passenger in 1A, refusing crew instructions, possible security threat, requesting gate authorities." He looked down at Jessica with a smug grin. "Have it your way. Enjoy the walk of shame." The cabin had gone silent. The other passengers in first class, a mixture of bankers, minor celebrities, and wealthy retirees, were watching with a mixture of curiosity and horror. Some looked annoyed that their pre-flight champagne was being delayed. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Jessica pulled out her phone and hit record. She placed it face down on the armrest, the camera lens capturing the audio perfectly. "Turn that off!" Gregory snapped, reaching for her phone. Jessica snatched it away. "Do not touch my property. I am documenting this interaction for my safety and yours." "You have no rights here," Gregory hissed. "On this plane, my word is law. You are disrupting the flight." 2 minutes later, the heavy tread of boots echoed on the jet bridge. 2 Port Authority officers entered the cabin, looking weary and annoyed. Gregory immediately transformed. His menacing sneer vanished, replaced by a look of concerned professionalism. He was an actor playing the role of the beleaguered victim. "Officers, thank God," Gregory said, gesturing to Jessica. "This woman snuck into the first-class cabin. She holds an economy ticket but refuses to leave seat 1A. She's been belligerent, swearing at passengers, and she threatened to assault Ms. St. Clair." Jessica's jaw tightened. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. Victoria St. Clair chimed in, clutching her pearls. "It was terrifying. She lunged at me. She said she was going to, well, I can't even repeat it." The older officer, a man named Sergeant Miller, looked at Jessica. He saw a young black woman in a hoodie, surrounded by wealthy white people pointing fingers. He sighed. "Ma'am, let's see your boarding pass." Jessica unlocked her phone and displayed the digital pass. "Seat 1A, paid in full. Name, Jessica Carter." Sergeant Miller looked at the phone, then at Gregory. "It says 1A right here." Gregory didn't blink. "It's a glitch. We've been having system errors all day. Look at the manifest." He pulled out a tablet. He had clearly manipulated the seating chart in the last 5 minutes. He showed the screen to the officer. "See, 1A is assigned to Victoria St. Clair. This woman is in 34B. She likely hacked the app or edited a screenshot. It happens all the time with these types of scammers." The officer looked conflicted. "Mum, the manifest says you're in 34B. If you want to fly today, you need to go to your assigned seat. If you continue to argue, we will have to escort you off the plane and place you under arrest for trespassing." Jessica looked at Gregory. The triumph in his eyes was sickening. He was enjoying this. He was getting off on the power trip of humiliating her. "Fine," Jessica said quietly. "I will move." "Excellent choice," Gregory said. "Brenda, escort her to the back. Make sure she doesn't steal any of the amenity kits on the way out." Brenda, a junior flight attendant with nervous eyes who had been hovering in the galley, stepped forward. She looked apologetic, but was too afraid of Gregory to speak up. "This way, ma'am," she whispered. Jessica stood up. She grabbed her duffel bag. As she passed Victoria St. Clair, the woman leaned in. "Don't worry, honey. I'm sure the bus is more your speed anyway." Jessica paused. She looked Victoria dead in the eye. "Enjoy the seat, Mrs. St. Clair. Make sure you get comfortable. It's going to be a very memorable flight." She walked down the aisle, past the lie-flat beds and the privacy dividers, through the curtain, and into the cramped, noisy chaos of economy. The difference was jarring. The air here was stale. The overhead bins were overflowing. A baby was already crying. She found seat 34B. It was a middle seat, sandwiched between a large man asleep with his mouth open and a teenager playing a video game at full volume. Jessica sat down, squeezing her bag under the seat in front of her. Her knees pressed against the hard plastic tray table. She took a deep breath. "Let them dig," she thought. "Let them dig the hole so deep they can never climb out." She pulled out her phone again. She didn't need the airline's Wi-Fi. She had a direct satellite uplink installed on her device, a perk of being the owner. She opened the secure corporate messaging app. She typed a message to the director of in-flight operations, who was currently at the headquarters in London. From J. Carter, CEO. To Marcus Thorne, Director of Ops. Subject, Flight ZA-404 incident. Marcus, I am currently on board ZA-404. I have been involuntarily downgraded from first class to economy by head purser Gregory Halloway, based on a fabricated manifest error and racial profiling. Do not contact the crew yet. I want to see how the next 7 hours play out. But I want you to pull Halloway's personnel file. Every complaint, every infraction. Have it ready for me when I land. Also, contact the JFK ground team. I want the security footage from Gate B12 preserved immediately. She hit send. The plane pushed back from the gate. As the safety demonstration began, Jessica watched Brenda walking down the aisle. Brenda looked stressed. She stopped at Jessica's row. "I'm really sorry," Brenda whispered, pretending to check Jessica's seatbelt. "Gregory. He's the senior lead. If we go against him, he writes us up. He's gotten 3 girls fired this year already." "It's okay, Brenda," Jessica said softly. "You're just doing your job. But tell me, does he do this often?" Brenda looked around to make sure nobody was listening. "Every flight. If he doesn't like someone's look, he bumps them. Usually he moves friends into first class or people who tip him. He calls it curating the cabin. It's an open secret, but management never listens." "Management is listening now," Jessica murmured, more to herself than to Brenda. "What was that?" "Nothing," Jessica smiled. "You better go. Don't let him see you talking to the trash." Brenda hurried away. The engines roared to life, and the massive Boeing 777 began its taxi to the runway. Jessica leaned her head back against the thin seat cushion. Up in 1A, Victoria St. Clair was sipping vintage Dom Perignon, laughing with Gregory about the riffraff. Down in 34B, the owner of the airline was plotting the most spectacular corporate execution in aviation history. The plane lifted off, climbing into the dark sky. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Jessica waited 20 minutes. Then she unbuckled. It was time for round 2. She wasn't going to stay in the middle seat for 7 hours. She needed to access the purser's workstation, and for that, she needed a distraction. Luckily, fate, or perhaps karma, was about to provide one. 3 hours into the flight over the dark, churning Atlantic, the cabin lights in economy were dimmed to a sickly orange hue. The air was thick with the smell of reheated aluminum foil dinners, some indiscernible pasta dish that had crusted over hours ago. Jessica Carter had not slept. While the man next to her snored loudly enough to rattle the armrest, she was working. Her phone was connected to the Zenith Executive Encrypted Network. It was a backdoor channel intended only for the highest-level IT administrators, and, of course, the CEO. She was combing through the flight's live data. What she found made her blood boil colder than the air outside. According to the digital manifest in the central server, Seat 1A, the seat she was physically removed from, was listed as empty. Jessica frowned, the blue light of her screen illuminating her focused eyes. If the system thought the seat was empty, that meant Victoria St. Clair's ticket hadn't been scanned for that seat. It meant the upgrade hadn't been processed legally. She dug deeper, accessing the point-of-sale logs for flight ZA404. There were no transactions for an upgrade. Then she checked the passenger profile for Victoria St. Clair. The woman was booked in seat 4F originally, but 4F was currently occupied by a young man in a hoodie who looked suspiciously like he didn't belong in first class either. It was a shell game. Gregory Holloway was running a ghost manifest. He was selling premium seats for cash under the table to passengers who wanted to feel important, marking the seats as broken or empty in the system to avoid flagging corporate and pocketing the money. It was a classic scam, one that cost the airline millions a year, but it was usually hard to prove. Usually. Unless the person investigating was sitting on the plane while it happened, armed with root access passwords. "Ladies and gentlemen," the intercom crackled. It wasn't the pilot, it was Gregory. His voice was smooth, dripping with fake hospitality. "We are currently serving our signature warm chocolate chip cookies in the first and business cabins. For our economy guests, the duty-free cart will be passing through shortly if you wish to purchase water or snacks." A collective groan rippled through economy. They hadn't been offered water in 2 hours. Jessica watched Brenda pushing the heavy duty-free cart down the narrow aisle. The girl looked exhausted. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and her hands shook slightly as she handed a bottle of water to a rude passenger who threw a credit card at her. Suddenly, a cry rang out from the back of the plane. "Help! Someone help her!" The shout came from row 45. The cabin woke up instantly. Heads popped up over seats. Brenda abandoned the cart and ran toward the back. Jessica unbuckled immediately. She didn't hesitate. She had trained as a flight attendant to pay for college before she started her first company. She knew the protocols better than half the crew. When Jessica reached row 45, a crowd had gathered. An elderly woman, frail and pale, was slumped over in the aisle seat. Her breathing was shallow and ragged. Her husband was panic-stricken, clutching her hand. "She's diabetic," the husband stammered, tears streaming down his face. "Her sugar. She needs juice, or sugar, right now. We asked for juice an hour ago, but nobody came." Brenda was kneeling, checking the woman's pulse. I don't have any juice on the cart," she stammered, panic rising in her voice. "We ran out of the complimentary cups in the first hour." "Get the medical kit," Jessica ordered, her voice cutting through the noise. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. Brenda looked up, startled to see the troublemaker from 1A standing there. The kit is in the forward galley, in first class. Gregory has the key." "Call him," Jessica said. Brenda grabbed the interphone handset on the wall. She dialed the first-class station. Jessica watched Brenda's face fall. He's not answering," Brenda whispered. "He must be doing the cookie service. He hates being interrupted during service." The elderly woman let out a low moan. Her eyes were rolling back. "To hell with service," Jessica snarled. She turned and sprinted up the aisle. She dodged limbs and bags, moving with a speed that startled the other passengers. She reached the curtain dividing economy from business. A flight attendant named Kevin tried to block her. "Ma'am, you can't be up here." Jessica didn't stop. She didn't even slow down. "Medical emergency. Move, or I will move you." Something in her eyes, a terrifying, cold authority, made Kevin step aside instantly. Jessica tore through the curtain into business, then through the second curtain into first class. The difference was enraged her. It was quiet here. The lights were dim and soothing. The smell of baked chocolate filled the air. Gregory was standing by seat 1A, laughing with Victoria St. Clair. He was holding a silver tray with a crystal glass of port wine. "Gregory!" Jessica shouted. He spun around, nearly dropping the tray. His face twisted into a mask of fury when he saw her. I told you, if you crossed that curtain again, I would possess the restraints. You are compromising flight safety." "We have a passenger in diabetic shock in row 45, Jessica said, stepping into his personal space. "I need the medical kit key. Now." Gregory sneered. "Diabetic shock? Probably just looking for free sugar. These economy passengers are always dramatic. I'm in the middle of service, you lunatic. Go back to your seat." Victoria St. Clair giggled. "Oh, let her have a sugar packet, Gregory. She looks desperate." Jessica didn't scream. She didn't plead. She stepped past Gregory to the wall locker where the enhanced medical kit was stored. It was secured with a digital keypad. "Get away from there." Gregory lunged for her. Jessica didn't need his key. She knew the master override code for all Zenith Airways locks. It was a failsafe built for marshals and senior auditors. Her fingers flew across the pad. 99 Disluo 4 Alpha. The locker beeped and popped open. Gregory froze. He stared at the open locker, then at Jessica. The color drained from his face. How did you do that?" Jessica grabbed the orange medical bag. She grabbed 2 cartons of apple juice from the first-class fridge and a handful of glucose gel packets. She turned to Gregory, her voice deadly calm. "We aren't done, Gregory. Not by a long shot." She ran back down the aisle, leaving the head purser standing in stunned silence, the silver tray shaking in his hands. 20 minutes later, the crisis had passed. The elderly woman, Mrs. Gable, was conscious and sitting up, sipping the apple juice Jessica had retrieved. Her color was returning. The cabin broke into scattered applause as Mrs. Gable squeezed her husband's hand. Brenda was crying softly in the galley, overwhelmed by the stress. Jessica stood next to her, disposing of the medical waste properly. "You saved her," Brenda whispered. "If we had waited for Gregory—" "He wouldn't have come," Jessica said, wiping her hands with a sanitizer wipe. "He doesn't care about the passengers, Brenda. He cares about the power." "He's going to write you up," Brenda warned, her eyes wide with fear. "He's going to tell the captain you broke into the medical locker. He'll say you stole drugs. He's done it before, to a passenger who annoyed him." Jessica nodded. "I expect he will. That's why I need to go see the captain first." "You can't," Brenda gasped. "The cockpit is locked. You can't just walk in." "I don't need to walk in," Jessica said. "I just need to use the interphone to the flight deck, and I need you to witness it." I can't. I'll lose my job." Jessica put a hand on Brenda's shoulder. "Brenda, look at me. By tomorrow morning, Gregory Halloway will not have a job. If you help me, I promise you, your job is safe. In fact, you might find your career advancing quite rapidly." Brenda looked into Jessica's eyes. She didn't know who this woman in the hoodie was, but she felt an inexplicable trust. She nodded. Jessica walked to the back galley interphone. She picked it up and pressed 22, the direct line to the cockpit, bypassing the purser station. "Flight deck," a deep voice answered. "Captain Anderson." "Captain, this is the passenger in 34B, Jessica said clearly. "I need to report a serious safety violation involving the head purser." "Who is this?" Anderson asked, sounding irritated. "Gregory just called up. He said there's a hijacker in the cabin who broke into the medical supplies. I accessed the medical kit to save a woman in diabetic shock because your purser refused to release the key," Jessica stated flatly. "Captain, I am not a hijacker. I am a whistleblower, and I have evidence that Gregory Halloway is running a ghost manifest scam on your aircraft right now." There was a silence on the line. The term ghost manifest was specific airline lingo. Passengers shouldn't know it. "That's a serious accusation," Captain Anderson said, his tone shifting from annoyance to caution. "Check your ACARS system, Captain," Jessica said. "I'm sending a message to your screen right now via the ground uplink." Jessica pulled out her phone. She sent a command through the corporate app. "Display alert. Flight deck. ZA 404. Sender. CEO office. Content. Confirm 1A vacancy." A moment later, she heard the captain's sharp intake of breath over the line. He had received the message. The system confirmed 1A should be empty, yet he knew Victoria St. Clair was sitting there. "Stay where you are," Captain Anderson said. "I'm sending the first officer back to assess." Jessica hung up. She turned to find Gregory standing at the entrance of the rear galley. He had snuck up while she was on the phone. He wasn't alone. He had the 2 Port Authority officers who were flying as air marshals, though they were actually just off-duty transport cops getting a free ride, another favor Gregory likely arranged. "That's her!" Gregory shouted, pointing a shaking finger. "She's tampering with the cockpit comms. She's crazy. Restrain her." The larger officer, Officer Davis, stepped forward, pulling out a pair of zip-tie handcuffs. "Ma'am, turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're interfering with a flight crew." "I was speaking to the captain," Jessica said, holding her hands up but not turning around. "Gregory is lying to you." "I don't care who is lying," Davis grunted. "The purser is in charge of the cabin. If he says you're a threat, you're a threat." "You really want to do this?" Jessica asked, looking Davis in the eye. "You want to handcuff the person who just saved a life because the man who sold a seat for a bribe told you to?" "Bribe!" Gregory's voice cracked. "She's delusional. Get her out of here." Davis grabbed Jessica's wrist, twisting it painfully behind her back. The cold plastic of the zip tie bit into her skin. Jessica didn't fight. She let them cuff her. It was better this way. The visual of her in cuffs would make the final payout of karma so much sweeter. "Take her to the jump seat in the back," Gregory spat. "Strap her in. I don't want to hear a word from her until we land in London. And then she's going straight to a holding cell." He leaned in close to Jessica's ear, his breath smelling of stale coffee and malice. "You thought you could embarrass me? Nobody embarrasses Gregory Holloway on his own plane. You're nothing. Just another piece of trash that couldn't afford the upgrade." Jessica looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You have the right to remain silent, Gregory. I suggest you start practicing." He laughed and walked away, heading back to first class to pour more champagne for Victoria. Officer Davis shoved Jessica into the rear jump seat, tightening the straps across her chest aggressively. "Sit tight. It's going to be a long 5 hours." Jessica closed her eyes. She felt the vibration of the engines against her back. 5 hours, she thought. That gives me plenty of time to draft his termination letter. She couldn't use her phone now. Her hands were bound. But she didn't need to. The message to the captain had been sent. The seed of doubt was planted. And soon, the first officer would come back to investigate. 10 minutes later, the curtain parted. It wasn't the first officer. It was Victoria St. Clair. She had come back to use the rear lavatory, claiming the front one was occupied by staff. She saw Jessica strapped into the jump seat, cuffed like a criminal. Victoria stopped, a cruel smile spreading across her face. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo. Oh, this is priceless. Rogue passenger restrained. This is going straight to Instagram. Air rage, trashy travel. I wouldn't post that if I were you, Jessica said calmly. And why not? Victoria laughed. Who are you to stop me? Because, Jessica said, posting evidence of yourself on a flight where you committed fraud is generally considered bad legal strategy. Victoria rolled her eyes. You're insane. She hit post. Jessica watched the loading bar in her mind. Good, she thought. Public evidence. The media will love this. Just then, the interphone above Jessica's head buzzed 3 times, the emergency signal. The plane banked sharply to the left. The engines roared. Captain Anderson's voice boomed over the PA, but this time he didn't sound calm. He sounded angry. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. I need the head purser, Gregory Holloway, to report to the flight deck immediately. Immediately. Gregory, who was halfway down the aisle, froze. Jessica smiled. The captain had checked the logs. The war had begun. The cockpit of the Boeing 777 was a sanctuary of humming avionics and blue screens, utterly detached from the chaos in the cabin. Captain Anderson sat with his jaw tight, staring at the ACAR's message on the center console. Confirm 1A vacancy. It was a code red administrative flag. In his 20 years of flying, he had only seen a direct message from the CEO office once, and that was when the airline went bankrupt a decade ago. The cockpit door buzzed. Gregory entered, looking flushed, but composing himself into a mask of professional concern. "Captain," Gregory said, smoothing his tie. "Sorry for the delay. It's a war zone back there. That woman, the one in the back, she's completely unhinged. She broke the lock on the medical kit. I've got her restrained in the aft jump seat. I recommend we have the police meet the aircraft at the gate." Anderson turned slowly in his seat. He didn't look at Gregory with the usual camaraderie. He looked at him with the cold, calculating gaze of a man responsible for 300 lives. "Gregory," Anderson said, his voice low, "why does the central computer say seat 1A is empty?" Gregory blinked. A micro-expression of panic flitted across his face before he buried it. "It's a glitch, sir. Like I told the ground crew, the system has been acting up all day. I have Mrs. St. Clair in that seat. She's a VIP. "A VIP who didn't pay for the upgrade?" Anderson asked. "She used miles. The system just didn't update." "I see." Anderson tapped the screen. "And this woman in the back, the one you restrained, did she threaten anyone? Did she have a weapon?" "She was aggressive," Gregory insisted, his voice rising. "She pushed past the crew. She stole drugs from the kit. She's a liability, Captain. I did what I had to do to protect the flight deck." Anderson stared at him for a long, uncomfortable silence. "Go back to the cabin, Gregory. Maintain order. I'll radio ahead for the authorities." Gregory exhaled, a smile of relief breaking through. "Thank you, Captain. You won't regret it. She needs to be made an example of." Gregory left. As soon as the door clicked shut, Anderson turned to his first officer, a sharp young pilot named Lewis. "Lewis, you have the controls," Anderson said, unbuckling his harness. "Where are you going, Cap?" "I'm going to the back," Anderson said, grabbing his hat. "I need to see this security threat for myself, because if that message on the screen is real, we aren't just flying a plane, we're flying a crime scene." Anderson walked through the first-class cabin. He saw Victoria St. Clair asleep in seat 1A, an empty bottle of champagne on her console. He saw the empty seat 4F where she should have been. He saw the nervous glances of the other flight attendants. He walked all the way to the back. The economy cabin was quiet, uneasy. People were whispering. He found Jessica in the rear galley, strapped into the jump seat. Her hands were still cuffed behind her back. Her head was bowed, her eyes closed. Officer Davis was sitting in the aisle seat nearby, reading a magazine, acting like a jailer. Anderson stopped in front of Jessica. "Mom?" Jessica opened her eyes. They were clear, sharp, and utterly unafraid. "Captain Anderson," she said. Her voice was calm. "I apologize for the disruption on your flight." Anderson looked at the cuffs. Then he looked at her face. He had seen the internal memos regarding the hostile takeover. He had seen the grainy photos of the new owner in the Financial Times, a reclusive tech mogul who rarely gave interviews. "Officer," Anderson said to Davis, "uncuff this woman." Davis looked up, confused. "Sir?" The purser said. "I am the captain of this vessel," Anderson barked. "Under maritime and aviation law, my authority supersedes everyone else's. Uncuff her. Now!" Davis scrambled to find his knife to cut the zip ties. The plastic snapped. Jessica rubbed her wrists, wincing slightly. "Thank you, Captain," she said, standing up and stretching. "Ms. Carter?" Anderson asked quietly, leaning in so the passengers wouldn't hear. "Yes," Jessica nodded. "Although Gregory prefers to call me trash." Anderson's face paled. I had no idea. I can have him removed from duty immediately. I can have him sit in the jump seat for the rest of the flight." "No," Jessica said, her eyes hardening. "If you remove him now, he'll claim it was a misunderstanding. He'll lawyer up. He'll say he was just following protocol for an unruly passenger. I need him to hang himself completely." "What do you want me to do?" "Let him believe he's won," Jessica said. "Let him think the police are coming for me. I want him to sign the flight closeout documents. I want his signature on the manifest that lists 1A as occupied by Victoria St. Clair. Once he signs that legal document, it's fraud. Then, and only then, do we act." Anderson nodded slowly. He respected the strategy. It was ruthless. "And you want to go back to first class? I can kick St. Clair out." "No," Jessica smiled, a dangerous glint in her eye. "I'll stay here. I'm learning a lot about your operation back here. Brenda is an excellent employee, by the way. You should promote her." "Consider it done," Anderson said. "I'll radio Heathrow. I'll tell them to have the special reception ready. But I won't tell Gregory who it's for." "Perfect." Anderson turned and walked back to the front. Jessica sat back down in the jump seat, not strapping herself in this time. She watched the clouds drifting by the window. The sun was beginning to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in blood orange and violet. It was the dawn of a new day, and the sunset of Gregory's career. The descent into London, Heathrow, was bumpy. The plane cut through the grey English overcast, the engines whining as the landing gear deployed with a heavy thud. Throughout the cabin, the fastened seatbelt sign illuminated. Gregory Holloway was in high spirits. He had spent the last hour charming the first-class passengers, apologizing for the disturbance in the back, and ensuring Victoria St. Clair had a fast-track immigration card. He felt invincible. He had handled the situation, the captain had backed him, or so he thought, and the troublemaker was going to jail. He picked up the PA handset. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are on our final approach to London. We ask that you remain seated. Upon landing, we ask that all passengers remain in their seats with their seatbelts fastened. Local authorities will be boarding the aircraft to remove a security risk before general disembarkation can begin. We apologize for the delay and thank you for flying Zenith." He said it with a smug satisfaction, his voice echoing through the plane. In the back, heads turned toward Jessica. Some looked at her with pity, others with annoyance. Jessica just looked out the window. She checked her phone. It had reconnected to the network. Message from ground team, Metro Police, and Zenith legal team in position at Gate 42. "We are ready." The wheels touched the tarmac with a screech of rubber. The plane shuddered, the reverse thrusters roared, and they slowed to a taxi. As the plane pulled into the gate, the tension in the air was palpable. The jet bridge connected. The bell chimed. "Stay seated," Gregory commanded, standing at the front of the cabin like a warden. "Nobody moves until the officers have the suspect." The forward door opened. 3 police officers boarded. They were Metropolitan Police, wearing high-visibility jackets. Behind them walked a man in a sharp charcoal suit. Mr. Sterling. No, wait. Sterling is a forbidden name. Mr. Arthur Pennyworth, the head of Zenith's legal department in Europe. Gregory beamed. He stepped forward to greet them. "Officers, thank you for coming quickly," Gregory said, extending a hand. The suspect is in the rear galley. She's been restrained. She assaulted a passenger and accessed restricted medical supplies. The lead officer, a tall woman with a stern face, ignored Gregory's hand. She looked past him. Where is the individual? In the back, row 45 area, Gregory pointed. I can escort you. That won't be necessary, the officer said coldly. Stay here. The three officers and the man in the suit walked down the aisle. The first-class passengers craned their necks to watch. Victoria St. Clair smirked. Finally, get her off. The officers walked through business, through the curtain, and into economy. The passengers held their breath. Jessica stood up from the jump seat. She picked up her duffel bag. The lead officer stopped in front of her. The cabin went silent. Miss Carter? The officer asked. That's me, Jessica said. The officer nodded respectfully. I'm Sergeant Miller. We received a call from your security detail. Are you injured? My wrists are a little bruised, but I'll live, Jessica said. We have a car waiting on the tarmac for you, the lawyer, Mr. Pennyworth, said, stepping forward. He looked horrified at her appearance. The hoodie, the messy hair. Miss Carter, on behalf of the London office, I am mortified. We have the paperwork ready for your signature. Thank you, Arthur, Jessica said, but I have one piece of business to finish before I leave. Of course. Jessica walked up the aisle. The police officers fell in behind her, forming a protective phalanx. The lawyer followed. It looked like a royal procession. She walked back through the curtain into first class. The silence was deafening. Victoria St. Clair's jaw dropped. She held her champagne glass halfway to her mouth, frozen. She saw the police, not arresting Jessica, but escorting her like a head of state. Jessica stopped at row 1. She looked at Victoria. You can keep the seat, Mrs. St. Clair, Jessica said smoothly. But I'm afraid your return ticket has been cancelled. Zenith Airways reserves the right to refuse service to passengers who abuse our staff. Victoria sputtered. Who do you think you are? Jessica didn't answer her. She turned to Gregory. Gregory was standing by the cockpit door, his face the color of old milk. He looked at the police, then at the lawyer, then at Jessica. The pieces were falling into place, but his brain refused to accept the picture they made. What is going on? Gregory stammered. Officer, arrest her. She's the suspect. Jessica reached into her bag. She didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a black lanyard with a security card encased in gold plastic. It was the Zenith Black Card, the universal access pass held only by the board of directors. She hung it around her neck. Gregory Holloway, Jessica said, her voice projecting clearly through the silent cabin. I am Jessica Carter. I am the new majority shareholder and CEO of Zenith Airways. Gregory made a sound like a dying radiator. His knees actually buckled, and he had to grab the wall to stay upright. No, he whispered. That's not possible. I'm the trash, Jessica finished for him. I'm the one who didn't fit the profile. She stepped closer. You have been running a fraudulent scheme, selling upgrades and pocketing the cash. You falsified a federal flight manifest. You denied medical equipment to a dying passenger. And you assaulted your employer. She turned to the lawyer. Arthur, do we have the termination papers? Drafted and ready, Miss Carter, Arthur said, pulling a blue folder from his briefcase. Jessica took the folder and shoved it into Gregory's chest. He instinctively grabbed it. You are fired, Gregory, effective immediately. You are stripped of your pension, your benefits, and your travel privileges. Gregory looked at the folder, shaking. You can't do this here. I have a union." "The union doesn't protect felons," Jessica said. She turned to the police officer. "Sergeant, I believe this man just signed the flight manifest confirming seat 1A was occupied by a non-paying passenger, while the digital logs prove he marked it empty to embezzle the funds. That constitutes fraud and endangerment of aircraft security." Sergeant Miller stepped forward, pulling out her handcuffs. The metal clicked ominously. "Gregory Holloway," the sergeant said, "you are under arrest." Gregory's eyes went wide. He looked at Victoria St. Clair for help. Victoria immediately looked out the window, pretending she had never met him. "Please," Gregory begged, tears starting to form. "Miss Carter, I didn't know. If I had known it was you—" "That's the point, Gregory," Jessica said, her voice dropping to a whisper that chilled the room. "You shouldn't have treated me with respect, because I'm the CEO. You should have treated me with respect, because I'm a human being. The fact that you only serve those you think have power is exactly why you don't deserve any." "Turn around," the sergeant ordered. Gregory turned. The clicks of the handcuffs were the loudest sound in the world. Jessica looked at the stunned first-class cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London," she said. "Please accept my apologies for the delay. As compensation, every passenger on this flight will receive a full refund and a voucher for future travel, except, of course, for seat 1A. She grabbed her duffel bag and walked to the door. "Let's go, Arthur. We have a company to fix." The video that Victoria St. Clair posted to Instagram, captioned, "Trash in the back, just air rage," did go viral, but not in the way she intended. By the time Jessica Carter sat down in the back of the black S-Class Mercedes speeding toward central London, the internet had done what it does best. It had weaponized the truth. A Twitter user with the handle Aviation Insider had cross-referenced the flight number and the blurry face of the criminal in the jump seat. Within an hour, a side-by-side photo was trending globally. On the left, Jessica Carter, the tech billionaire and new owner of Zenith Airways, gracing the cover of Forbes. On the right, Jessica Carter, handcuffed in a hoodie, being sneered at by a socialite. The headline on Daily Mail read, "Billionaire boss cuffed by her own staff, the flight that ended a career." Jessica watched the news unfold on her tablet as Arthur Pennyworth, the lawyer, briefed her on the immediate legal fallout. "The police are charging Gregory with fraud, embezzlement, and false imprisonment," Arthur said, adjusting his glasses. "He's currently being processed at the Heathrow Detention Centre. He's already asked for a public defender. It seems he didn't save much of that bribe money." "And Mrs. St. Clair?" Jessica asked, looking out at the rainy streets of Kensington. "She's currently in the VIP lounge, demanding to speak to a manager." Arthur suppressed a smile. "We've issued a lifetime ban on Zenith and all partner airlines. We are also suing her for the cost of the stolen seat, roughly $12,000, and filing a civil suit for defamation regarding the social media post. Her husband, Mr. St. Clair, has already called our office. He was displeased. Rumor has it he's cutting off her credit cards as we speak." Jessica nodded, feeling a heavy weight lift off her shoulders. "Good. Burn it all down, Arthur, but build something better in the ashes." 3 days later, the Zenith Airways headquarters in London was a glass tower of intimidation. The boardroom was filled with nervous executives, men in grey suits who had been complicit in the culture of elitism for years. They all stood up when Jessica walked in. She wasn't wearing a hoodie today. She was wearing a tailored navy suit that screamed power. She didn't sit down. She stood at the head of the table, projecting the security footage from Flight ZA 404 onto the massive screen behind her. It showed Gregory pushing her. It showed the officers handcuffing her. "This," Jessica said, pointing to the screen, "is why we are losing $50 million a quarter. Not because of fuel prices, not because of competition, but because we treat people like garbage." The room was silent. "I am implementing a new policy today," Jessica announced. "The dignity standard. Any employee caught discriminating against a passenger based on appearance, race, or class will be terminated immediately. No warnings. No unions saving you. We are also dissolving the Ghost Manifest protocol. If a seat is empty, it goes to the next deserving passenger or an employee on standby. It does not go to the highest bidder under the table." She looked around the room. "And one more thing. I need a new head of in-flight experience. Someone who understands what it's actually like in the cabin." The door opened. Brenda walked in. Brenda looked terrified. She was wearing her polyester uniform, clutching a notebook. She looked at the room full of millionaires and then at Jessica. "Come in, Brenda." Jessica smiled warmly. "Gentlemen," Jessica said to the board, "meet your new Vice President of Customer Experience." A murmur of shock went through the room. One older executive cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, with all due respect, she's a junior attendant. She doesn't have the corporate experience." "She has something you don't," Jessica cut him off. "She has a spine. She stood up to a bully to save a passenger's life when the rest of you created a system that enabled him. She knows more about service than any MBA in this room." Jessica turned to Brenda. "The job is yours if you want it. Triple your current salary. Full creative control over training. I want you to teach every new recruit how to be human." Brenda teared up. She nodded, her voice shaking but strong. "I won't let you down, Miss Carter." 6 months later, the transformation of Zenith Airways was the business story of the year. The stock had doubled. The dignity standard had become a marketing phenomenon. But the real closure came on a cold Tuesday morning in a London courtroom. Gregory Holloway sat in the defendant's box. He looked older, smaller. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, defeated stare. He had lost his house, his reputation, and his freedom. He was facing 3 years in prison for the fraud scheme. Jessica didn't need to attend the sentencing, but she went anyway. She sat in the back row, unnoticed. When the judge read the sentence, "Guilty on all counts," Gregory looked back. He scanned the room, perhaps looking for a friendly face, or perhaps looking for her. His eyes locked with Jessica's. He didn't sneer. He didn't glare. He just looked sad. He mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." Jessica didn't smile. She didn't nod. She simply stood up and walked out of the courtroom. The apology didn't matter. The change did. Outside, the sun was breaking through the clouds. Jessica checked her phone. She had a flight to catch. She was going on vacation, a real one this time. She arrived at Heathrow Terminal 5. The check-in area was bright and airy. The staff were smiling, genuinely smiling. She walked up to the counter. The agent, a young man with a bright yellow trainee badge, looked up. "Passport, please," he said cheerfully. Jessica handed it over. The agent scanned it. His eyes went wide. He looked at the screen, then at Jessica. He started to stammer. Miss Carter, I didn't know you were flying today. Let me get the manager. We can escort you to the VIP suite. Jessica raised a hand, stopping him. No, thank you, she said softly. I don't need the VIP suite. But you're the CEO, the agent said, confused. Where would you like to sit? Jessica looked at the boarding pass he had printed. It was for seat 1A. She smiled, took a pen from the counter, and crossed out 1A. She wrote a different number. Put me in 34B, Jessica said, picking up her bag. I hear the view is better from back there. And besides, I want to make sure the coffee is still hot. She winked at the stunned agent and walked toward the security line, merging with the crowd of everyday people, the students, the families, the tired travelers. She was just another passenger in a hoodie, heading home. But this time, nobody looked through her. This time, the world knew exactly who she was. This story isn't just about a bad flight. It's a reminder that true power doesn't need to shout, and dignity isn't something you can buy with a first-class ticket. Gregory and Victoria learned the hard way that when you judge someone by their appearance, you might just be handing the keys to your destruction to the very person who can use them. Jessica Carter proved that the most dangerous person in the room is often the quietest one. If you enjoyed this story of massive karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to see more stories where the arrogant get what they deserve, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. What would you have done if you were Jessica? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.